it's almost to a point where I think that Talk Academy and I are kind of similar, in the way that I've got enough of my personality into the show, and I've kind of adapted the show into something that is relatable to so many different types of people that is really not what it used to be. Like, it's an entirely different person now. If you were to try to personify Talk Academy, it's a lot closer to how I am with people than how it was originally intended to be, which I think is generally a good thing. I didn't see it that way at first, but I'm glad that that's been kind of changed in my mind for for the better of the show and for the better of the audience as well. Hello and welcome to Talk Academy, the podcast dedicated to improving ag literacy around the globe. I'm your host, Brennan Black, and this is the special anniversary episode of Talk Academy, and it's actually a two-part anniversary episode, kind of, because here with me is my very special guest, my girlfriend Gemma, because it is also our first anniversary.
Hi.
So, we want to do a special episode to kind of commemorate the past 3 years of Talk Academy. I started my channel, actually my first ever YouTube video went up on April 12th, 2018. So it's been exactly 3 years. Actually, the day this goes up, it'll be 2 days after 3 years. And Gemma and I started dating today, last year. So we thought it'd be fun to do kind of a double anniversary episode, kind of talk about some of the things that Talk Academy has been through over the past 3 years, talk about some of the things that we've been through in terms of, our agricultural involvement, some things that have gone on outside of Talk Academy, that kind of stuff, and just kind of, have a little reflection episode. So it's not going to be anything crazy. We're not going to be having our usual conversations and that kind of stuff. It's just going to be fun to look back and see where we've come. So, you ready?
Yeah.
So, I think we'll start on the Talk Academy side of things. Like I said, I started it back in April 12th of 2018. When I started, I never really expected to be doing it 3 years later, especially not the way that I'm doing it now or with the people that I'm doing it now with. But for people who've been listening for a long time, they may remember I had two guests I started off with, or two co-hosts rather that I started off with, Abby and Evan. And Gemma here has met Evan actually. She hasn't gotten a chance to meet Abby yet, but we're hoping to make that happen soon because Abby's awesome. But it's something that I get asked about a lot. Do you miss your co-host? Do you wish you still had co-hosts? It kind of sucks they left you, all that kind of stuff. Part of me does miss having them on the show because it was fun, the conversations that we had, but it has been nice to be able to kind of take this in my own direction and do it my own way and just do things that I think are best for the show and kind of not be limited by having other people tell me what they think is best and having to work together on that kind of stuff. That being said, Abby and Evan are both very supportive of the show. They like what I've done with it. And they're kind of, even if they may not be my official co-host, they're always welcome to come back on the show, and they do from time to time. And they've definitely been busy doing their own thing. So we all benefited in the end. It's not like we ended on a sour note or anything. We're all still friends. And so that was always kind of nice to be able to do. It's weird. I always say that last year was kind of my first year of Talk Academy because I spent the first 2 years just kind of experimenting, trying to figure out what I wanted to do with the show. Trying out different interview styles, interviewing different people, looking into different topics. I really didn't know where I wanted the show to go. I knew I wanted to teach people about agriculture, but my first season was entirely based off of information and not so much about the conversation itself. I started to realize that was a major mistake and that people weren't really paying attention to the information itself, that we needed to find a new approach to bring it to them. I really didn't regret anything about my first season. Yeah, I kind of got lazy towards the end there and I, slacked off for 3 or 4 months, and then I almost actually ended up quitting the podcast until I decided to bring it back. But I think that first season was necessary to really figure out what the podcast was meant to be and how much potential it had. I don't think that interviewing the people I interviewed was bad. I think I got a lot of good information out there. And I still refer back to episodes every now and then whenever I get the chance to. But it really wasn't until actually around mid-April last year, around the same time that we started dating, that I decided to bring Talk Academy back to life. It was once everything shut down, everybody was quarantined. I had a feeling, and I was accurate in my assessment, that people were going to be listening to a lot more podcasts, and I also hadn't really accounted for it, but a lot of people actually started making their own podcasts too. The podcast content creator market was booming. I mean, people were making podcasts left and right. There was a massive new community of podcast creators. Indie podcasts became like one of the most popular hobbies for people to be able to do. It was such a big thing because people had nothing else to do. They just kind of sat around and talked to their computer, which is, as you guys know, what I did too. I finally decided to reach out and ask for help from the podcasting community. And I was welcomed with open arms. I mean, people were very excited about my topic. They thought it was really cool. And yeah, it was kind of niche, but that was necessary to get a good audience. People were adamant about having their questions answered. They wanted to know more about agriculture, which was really cool to see. It was a whole new side of Talk Academy that I never really expected to be there. And really, had it not been for, me talking to Gemma about agriculture and starting to realize the people who don't know about it actually are curious and want to learn more, that I decided to take it to the next level and start interviewing people that don't have ag backgrounds. From there, it expanded and we went into our third season, which is where we're at now. So, that being said, I'd like to kind of throw the mic over to Gemma here in terms of, from the point I started the second season to now, what have you observed about the podcast itself, about, the people I've been talking to, the topics I've been going over, my own interview style, even the things I've taught you. Obviously when we started dating, you didn't have hardly any experience with agriculture, and now you have quite a bit. So what would you mind kind of recapping your own experiences?
Yeah, so definitely right around when we first started dating, I want to make a note. I was a city girl. I grew up in the middle of the city, probably 20-30 minutes from the nearest country land. Like, I always wanted to be part of it. I always, saw videos online and pictures and people working with animals, and I wanted it more than anything, but I was a city girl. My friends and I went to the mall on weekends. Now I go out to beef units on weekends. My life has drastically changed in terms of what I find fun. Brendan and I have been learning how to rope cattle. I mean, I am no longer the girl that I once was. In terms of watching the podcast grow, one of the things I've definitely noticed was, before we started dating, the majority of the people that you would talk to were other ag people. You seem to stay within your own community. Around when we started dating and you started to launch season 3, season 2.
We're in season 3.
We're in season 3. Season 2, you started branching out more and more and interviewing people with less and less ag backgrounds. I mean, you interviewed a girl just a few weeks ago, or the episode released a few weeks ago. She's terrified of cows.
Yeah.
Farm animals.
Yeah.
But did
Shout
you
out
say
to Amy.
Hi, Amy. I helped edit your episode. But she trained tigers, right?
Yeah.
She trained tigers, but she was terrified of cows. I mean, people from these crazy, crazy backgrounds that had no experience. They'd have experience with animals maybe, but no, agricultural experience. I mean, you've talked to people about Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
You never used to talk about Star Wars on your podcast, despite it being one of the things you love most in life. And I've definitely seen, Star Wars is a great segue note into that. I've seen you incorporate a lot more of things that you love outside of agriculture into your podcast. Star Wars, robots, more technology outside of agriculture that could be brought in, things like that. And you've overall just gotten more confident in yourself. And it's been really amazing to watch you grow the past year and the past 2 seasons, and seeing how much change you've how much change has been dealt to you in terms of your interviewing style and the people that you are interviewing. I mean, if you listen to it episode by episode, it probably seems like a very, very minimal change. But if you would listen to the last episode of season 1 up to the most recent episodes of season 3, they're so different.
Oh, night and day.
They are completely different, and it's amazing. And I've loved getting to listen to your podcast, and now you're letting me help with the editing side of things, which means hours upon hours of listening to the same clips over and over again. But it's fun because the people you interview are hilarious, and
yes, they are.
They're so entertaining. I mean, you did an entire hour and a half episode about bees.
Oh yeah, KT, that was a great episode.
KT, and I loved editing that.
Yeah,
I loved picking out the trailer for that. That was so much fun. You would never think, oh, I could listen to an hour and a half about bees. Nobody thinks that. And then you do, and you're like, oh, I actually really enjoyed that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's actually helped me grow a lot, which has been super, super cool.
Yeah. No, I think that, you make a good point about my growth and development with the podcast. And I think that a good characteristic, like character description, I don't know what you want to call it, like a good evolution of the character of both the podcast and myself has kind of, it seems like I have gotten to a point now where I'm able to kind of integrate myself into the podcast more. Like when I started the podcast, it was very, like I didn't want it to be professional. It kind of just was. It just naturally founded itself as a very professional, very informational type podcast. Which was great, for me, because I love learning the information, but I didn't feel like I was part of it. Like, I felt like I was just there asking the questions, but I wasn't part of the conversation. It was just me giving the guest guides on what to talk about. It wasn't like I was engaging in like a colorful conversation. There wasn't a whole lot of humor in it. There wasn't references to goofy stuff or weird questions or anything like that. It was kind of just run of the mill. Hey, what do you do? And could you talk about it for an hour? And that the other thing too, when I first started, I was terrified of going over an hour in episodes. Like I would go like 45 minutes and then try to cut it off because I didn't think people wanted to hear hour-long episodes. I learned a lot about podcasting after my first couple years, talking to people, learning about different styles of podcasting. Again, that indie podcaster community is something that was very, very new when I joined it, and people found out that I had been podcasting for 2 years at that point, and I knew half as much as they did. It was kind of a shell shock to me. Gemma can account for it. I was very frustrated because there were some people who were, doing the podcast for 6 months and they had, way more views than I did. They were doing way better stuff with editing. They had all kinds of cool stuff going on. But at the same time, they asked for help a lot sooner. And that changed a lot about how they did their podcast. And it's definitely changed a lot about how I've done mine. To Gemma's point, I think that as I got more comfortable with the idea of this podcast can be educational and fun, it doesn't have to just be, a textbook in audio form, then I think it got a lot easier for me to be able to produce episodes. And I don't mean to make it sound like my first season episodes were bad or boring or anything like that. They were far from it. I enjoy those episodes. I still go back and listen to them all the time. There's a reason I promote them on Mondays, is because I think that I made some really, really solid episodes. It's just that those episodes weren't exactly relatable. Like I said, they were pure information. It was just me talking to people who are professionals in their industry, which for somebody who's looking for that could be really useful. For somebody who's looking for something fun to listen to on an hour-long car drive, they might not look towards that. They might look towards an episode where we compare the movie The Martian to modern agriculture and talk about how, some things were realistic, some things weren't, and then I reference older episodes and they go back and find them that way. I think that, to Gemma's point, I started bringing Star Wars into things. I have episodes planned out that I'm going to record here soon about like Minecraft and agriculture, Pokemon. Like I have all kinds of goofy stuff I want to incorporate. People have brought up amazing topics for me to talk about. To Amy's point, the Amy that we shouted out earlier, the one that's scared of cows. By the way, Amy, you're never going to live that down. I hope you realize that. She brought up a really interesting topic, guerrilla gardening, which I had no idea what that was, or the weird fruit that she showed me. So I'm learning stuff through all this too. It's not just about me teaching others; it's about having a two-way conversation. Figuring out what people that aren't in agriculture want to know and what they have to bring to the table, and what people from the ag side of things know and what they think the consumers want to know, or what they want to know about the consumers. So like, the whole goal of the podcast has always been to find a way to relatably promote agriculture in a way that both agriculturalists and general consumers can appreciate and enjoy. And it was a very long road, and I made a lot of good friends along the way. I mean, like, Patrick has been a phenomenal friend. He's been on quite a few episodes, and he's helped out a lot with my editing. He's helped me kind of figure out where I stand in the podcasting community. Alex from Time for Your Hobby has done an amazing job. Him and I still talk all the time, even though he's kind of on paternity leave right now with his kid. The guys from over from Absolutely Gobsmacked, Braden and Logan, they still do amazing jobs. They comment on every single Instagram post that I do, and they are by far my biggest fans, which I think is hilarious. I'm big fans of their shows too. This is the thing, all the friends that I've made, they do phenomenal work. Like, Joanne over at the Turtle Stack, phenomenal show. Like, some of the things that they produce, I'm so impressed by. And yet, when we talk to each other, it's like the things that I say, they're like, wow, I never thought of that. It's like, dude, you're doing way better than I am. Why are you taking my advice? And it's really cool to have that little group of friends that I can always count on to go, hey, I, want to do this thing with my podcast, but I don't know if this is a bad idea. What do you guys think? And I have a little council of people that can say, well, it's worth a try, or, hey, I think that'll be a great idea, or, hey, no, that's going to crash and burn. I think you should be careful, and more often than not, their advice has been right on. And I've made, a ton of great changes to my podcast, both in terms of content and interview style and even editing, because of the people I've met and the influence that they've had on me, and the things I've learned from the community and all that kind of stuff. Because the podcasting community is surprisingly one of the most wholesome and like, generally beneficial communities I've ever been part of. And so I think that, Gemma also brought up towards the end there that I started to kind of reach out and actually have her help me with editing. I think that's been really fun because she's gotten so into it. She's even started her own podcast, which I promoted before. But it's really cool to see people get into that kind of stuff. If I was still running my podcast season 1, even into season 2, I was still stubborn about this. I didn't let anyone touch my episodes. Like, I had people offer to be my editor. I had people offer to do my graphic design. I had people offer to help me edit it, to try to cut down my time spent, all that kind of stuff. I was very adamant about, no, these are my episodes. I edit them because I don't want you to mess them up. It's kind of taken a lot because I'm still very stubborn, but, being able to branch out and say, hey, if you want to edit 5 of my episodes for me while I'm trying to get other work done, I would really appreciate that. And, she's been amazing, in the background working on stuff while I've been at work or while I've been in class, or just working on other projects with them, trying to get ready for the podcast or for other stuff that I'm doing. So it's been really cool to see this kind of turn into not just my project, but a project that I can share with, the people that I love and the people that I hold a lot of respect for. And so, that's really another thing that was a goal of mine when I started the podcast was, I don't want this to be just me talking to the microphone kind of project. I want this to be a community driven project. I want people to be involved in this that don't even have any involvement with my personal life. People who care about this, that want to invest in it and want to see it do well. And over time, that's kind of become the case. I've made a lot of friends that are so caught up in Talk Ag to Me that they forget about their own podcast sometimes, which I have to constantly remind them about. But I've been guilty of that too. I mean, Sammy and I kind of go back and forth on that quite a bit, and it's something that's not necessarily good, but it's okay. But yeah, so I think that I've definitely grown a lot. The podcast has grown a lot. I've gotten to a point now where the podcast and I are very much almost interchangeable. A lot of the personality of the podcast, because when I started, I never considered Talk Ag to Me to be who I am. Like, we were separate entities. There was me, then there was Talk Ag to Me. Talk Ag to Me was kind of its own body, its own governing force, and then now it's almost to a point where I think that Talk Ag to Me and I are kind of similar, in the way that I've got enough of my personality into the show, and I've kind of adapted the show into something that is relatable to so many different types of people that is really not what it used to be. Like, it's an entirely different person now. If you were to try to personify Talk Ag to Me, it's a lot closer to how I am with people than how, it was originally intended to be, which I think is generally a good thing. I didn't see it that way at first, but I'm glad that that's been kind of changed in my mind for the better of the show and for the better of the audience as well. I don't know.
Yeah, I think I definitely agree with you on that. I also, honestly, I want to point out that I've also seen a lot of change in your personal life, or our personal life, behind the scenes with the podcast. One, I think with letting me help you out with the editing, I've definitely seen a lot of stress taken off of your shoulders that was put there for no reason before because you're stubborn.
Mm-hmm.
Luckily, this time I did out stubborn you and got you to cave in and let me help you on occasion. Somehow. But I've also seen you have a lot more pride and a lot more joy in what you do. And I think part of that is also, you're not just doing your podcast. You've been guests on countless other podcasts as well. And you always come back talking to me and you're just like, oh my gosh, we did this and we talked about this and I have this idea based off of this that we did. Like, you're pulling in so much information, not just from learning from your guests on your own podcasts, but by being guests on other podcasts. You're learning what you like and what you don't like, and you're taking ideas and you're developing them into your own style, and seeing you really just turn into your own person and kind of, like you said, melding with your podcast has been awesome. I've seen you so much happier with it and so much more proud of the work that you're doing. And I mean, you know, we still have nights where you come back and you're just put your head on my shoulder because you're frustrated because an episode is taking way longer to edit than you thought it would. But you also have nights where you come and you jump at me and you're so excited and you have so much passion behind your eyes about what you're doing. And I mean, you have the TikTok for Talk Ag to Me. For those of you who listen to Talk Ag to Me but don't follow the TikTok, you should, because he does amazing little short videos where he actually, like, shows the information. He just doesn't just, you know, say it to you through a microphone. And I actually help out a little bit on that one as well. Mm-hmm. And you recently just went viral on there. Like, you have millions of people watching that video, excited about the information that you're sharing and wanting more. And it's just been amazing to watch you really fall into the place where you wanted to be, where you're teaching people the importance of where their food comes from and the actual care and love that goes into it from the farmer's perspective and the operations perspective. Mm-hmm. And then, you know, the excitement of the consumer's perspective. Because, like, for instance, you don't know that much about popcorn.
No.
You're learning more, but you don't know that much about it.
No.
But it's your favorite snack in the entire world.
Yeah, I learned that there's 2 different types of popcorn, and there's a whole, like, there's a method of growing it. They actually, they mature a lot later than average popcorn, but that's a whole other episode.
But, like,
I should get a guest from Popcornopolis. Now that would be a good episode.
That would be funny. They have a TikTok.
They do. I follow them.
They have a TikTok.
Yeah, I'm trying to get them to follow me back. It's taking a little bit too long, but we'll get there.
But I mean, part of it too is I've seen you grow as a person as you teach more, but I've seen you grow even more as you learn more. I mean, you have people on your TikTok making comments saying, well, isn't it like this? And then we do a little bit more research than we had before, and you're like, oh, it is. Or for instance, the video that blew up is all about the difference between bulls, steers, heifers, and cows, and how a steer is a castrated bull, and the amount of people in the comments that were like, but it's a bullock.
Yeah.
And we learned that pretty much everywhere but America, which is where we're from, people call steers bullocks.
Right.
We learned something new every single day. We also learned what an ox actually is.
Yeah. So that's a side note. For anyone who didn't know, which is probably all of you, because I think we were all lied to as children, an ox is actually a steer that is older than 3 years old. So and trained to be a draft animal. So if it's a bull that's been castrated past 3 years, or even if it's a bull that's castrated at 6 months and it lives past 3, and it's a draft animal, it's called an ox. Like, why were we never taught this?
I honestly thought, because, like, I read Little House on the Prairie growing up, and I watched
played Oregon Trail.
I always thought that ox were just a completely different animal.
Yeah.
I thought maybe they're, like, some sort of bovine creature, but, like, they're not.
I thought
cattle.
I thought they were like bison or something. Like,
exactly.
Why?
I honestly thought they were like a small bison.
Yeah.
Apparently, just like Oregon Trail lied to everybody, which
Yes.
in their defense, they never actually told us what it was. They were like, these are
No.
ox. We were just kind of handed this animal.
Yeah, they're like, here's a bunch of oxen. And we're like, okay, cool. So we can eat them, right? No, you have to use them to pull your wagon. Okay, cool. So we can eat them, right? And then you eventually ate them and died.
Pretty much. So, I mean, through doing this, you have learned so much as well about things in your own field of study that no textbook is ever going to teach us.
Right.
I mean, I'm sure some textbook somewhere buried deep in some library tells you, hey, oxen are just cattle.
Well,
but you're about to be a senior in college, and you still haven't been taught that.
Well, the thing is, I have animal science textbooks under my bed that I read frequently. I checked that night after that video went viral. I checked. There is nothing in there about what oxen are. They're not even in the book. So I think that somebody is lying to me. I think that's like a secret that the government decided to hide from us, that
It's
oxen
like
are
the
cattle.
pigeons?
We don't go into the pigeons.
I think the
But-
pigeons are government weapons. They work for the bourgeoisie.
Okay. Well, the other, like, you know, to your point, it's interesting because, like, even the last episode I recorded, which actually isn't coming out until the week after this one comes out, with Randy, we talked for an hour about bell peppers. I have no idea anything about bell
love
peppers.
Bell peppers.
I learned a lot just researching for that episode, and him and I just talked, and we were looking stuff up during the episode. Like,
Did you know that a bell pepper can get pregnant and grow a mini bell pepper inside of it?
interesting. Did you know that all the different colors of bell pepper are the same bell pepper?
Aren't they just at different stages?
Yeah. I
Yeah.
didn't know that, and he
That's-
didn't know that.
That's why their sweetness levels change.
Right. So, and actually, red bell peppers are the most nutritious because they're at the end of the ripening phase.
Yeah.
So
Aren't they also like the most bitter?
probably, I don't know. There's also purple bell
No,
peppers.
they're the sweetest. Green and yellow are the most bitter, and then orange and red are the sweetest ones.
Okay. There's also purple bell peppers apparently.
I did know that.
Yeah. But yeah, the more you know. So, but no, to your point, I think that
I know a strange amount about bell peppers.
you know a strange amount about a lot of things. Although so do I. So I guess that's fitting. But no, I think that I've learned a lot about a lot of things, you know, not just agriculture. I've learned a lot about people too through the podcast, about what people are interested in, because I grew up, and people will kind of learn this from the first couple episodes of my second season and through most of my first season, that I grew up believing that people who weren't in agriculture didn't care about it, that they had no interest in food, in like where it comes from, that they were actively against agriculturalists and farmers. Because I grew up in a farm town, and most of the people who lived there that weren't part of agriculture were actively against it. You know, if you didn't grow up on a farm, most of the people there thought that the farmers were terrible people. You know, they were either vegans or environmentalists or whatever the case. So I was kind of, you know, raised around an environment where if you weren't part of ag, you were against it. And so that kind of gave me this false perception of how the rest of the world works. And I learned through the podcast that a lot of people, despite background, have a genuine interest in where the food comes from and everything that goes into it.
Oh, yeah.
And that was what kind of inspired the second season to even be about interviewing people outside of agriculture. Because I wanted to know, okay, well, what do you guys want to know? What questions do you have? What you know, where is your knowledge set, and where does it need to be for you to be comfortable with agriculture as an industry? And I learned that there's actually very, very few people out there that are actually against agriculture. Most of the time, it's people who just don't know and they have genuine questions, or they just don't think about it that often. And so that was kind of an eye opener for me. But you know, like Gemma said with the TikTok, that was kind of an attempt. I mean, you guys know Tyler, you guys know Steven from Dairy Muse. Like they've both been on here plenty of times. They were kind of my inspirations for going towards that route, because I saw TikTok as an educational tool more than an entertainment tool, which it can be both. I mean, they call it TikTok University for a reason. There's definitely a lot to learn from TikTok. Same with YouTube. And so I decided, except YouTube's a bit more complicated, but that's a whole nother talk for another day. YouTube's corrupt. But I decided that I wanted to approach the TikTok educational side of the platform and see if I could make a name for myself. And the thing is, I originally started it as an idea of promoting the podcast. I never started it as an educational tool as an individual project. It kind of just turned into that, because I started producing videos about animal behavior, about general agriculture, about a lot of things that had to do with things that I was talking about on the podcast. I did an episode, like I think the first video I did on there was well, the first video, like there was like 3 videos I did before I started doing educational stuff. But the first educational video I did was why milk is white. And so that was a whole conversation that I had. I didn't get very much attention on it, which was fine. I wasn't really expecting to. But I noticed that after a while, I started posting videos about like animal behavior, cattle, body language, all that kind of stuff that I talked about before on the podcast. And for some reason, one video I posted, somebody posted a comment because I was talking about a bull, and the commenter said, "Hey, I thought all bulls are male and all cows are female, and that the bulls have horns and all this kind of stuff." Because the bull I was talking about didn't have any horns. So I made a video addressing that comment, saying, here's what a cow is, here's what a heifer is, here's what a bull is, a steer, all that kind of stuff. And like Gemma said, that video blew up. I mean, like I posted it, and then 7 hours later, my phone starts vibrating off the hook. And then I check it. I went from 70 followers to 800 in a matter of 30 minutes. And then I gained 1,000 views in the matter of an hour. And by the end of the night, I was at 1,000 followers and like 17,000 views. It was insane. And then within a week, I was at 10,000 followers and 1 million views on that video. Like it blew up so much, and all my other videos started to get way more attention. And I started to see that even though my podcast may not be getting a significant amount of listeners, TikTok does have potential to be an educational platform for the same conversations I was looking for. And it became more about the conversation than it did about the episodes. I wasn't worried about being a famous podcaster like Joe Rogan. I've never wanted to be that anyways. I want to make sure people are hearing what I'm saying, that they're interested in what I have to say, that they're learning from it, whatever. And they were. They actually had genuine questions. Some of them had kind of ridiculous questions because they wanted to try to screw with me, but...
In their defense, you did make the statement that there's no such thing as a dumb question.
Which has been the motto of Talk Ag to me for forever. I mean, since my first episode of interviewing consumers, I've said there's no such thing as a dumb question. And I stand by that. I believe that if a question is genuine, no matter what it is, it's not dumb. It may be a little strange, but as long as you genuinely want to know, it's not a dumb question. There were some people who challenged that and tried to ask non-genuine, really dumb questions like, how do you milk a bull? The answer is you don't, unless you want to get kicked.
I really hope all of you knew that one.
But it's one of those things that's like, I was not prepared for the amount of positive attention I got on that. And like, the thing is, those two haven't even crossed over yet. Like, people from TikTok haven't really gone over to the podcast yet. I've watched the analytics. They haven't changed drastically. And people from the podcast seem to not be finding the TikTok at all. So it was really interesting to see that there's, like, very little crossover there. But the two audiences are asking similar questions. Like, the questions that you guys ask whenever whenever I have guests on here are very similar to the questions I get in TikTok, which is awesome. I mean, that means that people are thinking very similarly, and that gives me a good gauge of what people are thinking about when they think about agriculture. So, all in all, there's been a lot of growth on the podcast, in terms of the projects, in terms of the education, in terms of the conversations. Everything has changed. And everything's going to continue to change. I've been talking about doing new projects with like live streaming and other platforms. TikTok was kind of an experiment I wanted to try out, and it's been doing pretty well. I've been talking to Tyler a lot again about things that he wants to try out, and we've been kind of brainstorming ideas. It's a really, really cool thing to watch the podcast kind of go in different directions and change all the time, and interviewing people that I typically wouldn't talk to and seeing how they react to certain things, and like kind of getting a gauge for I went from having conversations about things that I knew a lot about to talking about bell peppers for 45 minutes, and I know nothing about bell peppers. So it's like it's fun. I genuinely enjoy being challenged and being asked questions that I can't always answer on the fly. And, being forced to kind of fact check myself and make sure that I know, the things that I claim to be true. That's actually why I'm working on a series right now called Where I Went Wrong. It's all about answering, addressing answers that I did to questions in the past that weren't entirely accurate. And I never say something that I know to be accurate. It just tends to be that sometimes I do my research and then I check it, and it turns out that the research I did was outdated and I need to do new research, so it's like, people make mistakes. I'm never going to deny that I'm, imperfect and that I don't know everything. but just seeing the growth itself of the project, and like Gemma said, there's episodes that I'm just kind of like, wow, that really drained my energy. And there's other episodes where I come back super excited about what I talked about, and it's because as I'm studying to become an ag teacher, I'm starting to realize that the things that I'm talking about are things that people genuinely want to hear, and that gives me a lot of hope for the future of the podcast and of all of my ag education projects, because my ultimate goal is to make sure that people understand where their food comes from and how important it is to preserve that. And I've seen a lot more positive results than I was told I was going to see by other members of my community. And so that was kind of really cool to see too.
Yeah, and I definitely, in terms of educating people who have no ag background, who want to know more than you originally thought they would, I think the TikTok comments, like all of the people who are like, oh, I grew up in the city, thank you for this information, like I never knew this, like that gave me an idea personally, because not to say that I'm disconnected from the podcast, because I'm not. Like I said, I help edit it and everything, and I'm kind of his idea dummy where we bounce ideas off of each other, but I don't get as much hands-on with the guests or the actual listeners, the audience. So I think the day that really showed me just how much it impacts people, aside from me being somebody who again came from the city and then was excited to find somebody who could teach me more, was when my best friend who lives in Sacramento, shout out Ravity, if you are listening, which I hope you are, she came down to visit last week. She hadn't met Brendan before because obviously she lives out of town from us, but so we decided to take her to his hometown, his little farm town that he comes from, for the day, and, you know, get her out of the city, get her some quote-unquote fresh air, which is dusty country air, but, you know.
Hey, it smells good.
Smells good. Doesn't taste good, though.
No.
Smells good, but, you know, get her a little bit of a different experience. We took her out to a dairy. Shout out to Tyler, who put up with us for 2 hours.
Hey, I think he was having a blast. You got to talk to him about the email he wants to get.
He wants to ride an ostrich. Thank you.
But he wants to eat an emu. Well, emu eggs.
Emo eggs. He wants to egg. Singular.
Yeah,
egg.
You only need one.
You only need one. Could feed that man, if it was just him, for months.
Mm-hmm.
The question is, could he eat it before it goes bad? That's the real question.
I feel like he could.
Probably. Shout out to you, Tyler. Thanks for that day, by the way. But we took her out to the dairy, and then we took her out to Brendan's sister's, where she has some horses, and we went riding and everything. She came back from that trip and told me, I'm gonna go home and I'm gonna try and find a job on a farm, even if it's just scooping cow crap. Like, I wanna be a part of this. I wanna work in this. I wanna learn more about this. And that's when it hit me. I was like, oh, city people really aren't as against agriculture as I thought they were. And she has, like, virtually no experience. I mean, like, I believe she has been horseback riding before once or twice. Mm-hmm. And she has friends out there who own farmland, and she's gone out and visited, but she's never really been hands-on in it. And that day she realized how much she loves it. Mm-hmm. And that was amazing to me, to see just how much it impacts lives when people really just stop to give it a chance.
Yeah, no, the last day that she was here visiting, she actually sat me down and asked me, like, hey, do I need a degree to go into an ag job? You know, like, where is a good area for me to look for jobs? Like, she was very serious about getting involved in agriculture, and she was asking me, like, you know, legitimate questions. It wasn't like hey, when can we see the cows again? It was like, hey, where can I go to work with these animals? Like, she was showing genuine interest in ways that I hadn't really expected her to show, and that was really cool to see. And it's something that a lot of people have started to show that I really wasn't expecting. You know, they're starting to realize that there's jobs out there for people who don't want to be farmers but still want to work in ag. You know, that You can work with animals, you can work with technology, you can operate drones, computers, all that kind of stuff that we talked about in older episodes. That blows people's minds, how connected we are to technology in the ag industry. And people realize, oh, I can still work in ag and not be a farmer. And that's like getting a lot of people really interested. Or even like, when everything shut down because of COVID. And when I first started the second season, I had a bunch of people asking me questions about food because they're trying to figure out how to grow their own. They want to start gardening, either whether it be a hobby thing or they're worried about running out of food eventually. They want to start figuring out how to sustain themselves. They want to figure out what's going into their food. They're becoming more conscious of the practices that's creating it, and that's provoking more productive conversations about the types of technologies and advancements in science that's going into the things that we're eating. And at the end of the day, that was the ultimate goal of Talk Ag to Me. So I think that it's definitely accomplishing a lot more than I ever dreamed it would, and I think that's awesome. And I at one point wanted to use it as an educational tool for my students, but I'm not even sure I'll need to at this point. I think that it's serving a better purpose, educating the public, and I can worry about the students myself. And that was something that was really interesting for me to see because, like I mentioned, Talk Ag to Me mostly existed as its own thing. It wasn't really part of me, and I wasn't really part of it. But being able to kind of intermingle ourselves, kind of get a lot of my personality into Talk Ag to Me has given it enough life that it can be a kind of a standalone educator and still have enough of me in it that it's not going to bore people to death. And so I think that was kind of a really cool thing to see because a lot of stuff that I teach people, I like... Talk Ag to Me has been very, very good practice for me, and from a teaching perspective, because I repeat things a lot, and like I have to, because people ask questions over and over again. Not the same people asking the same questions, but different people asking very similar questions. I've gotten into the habit of being able to if somebody asks me something about something that I've talked about before, I've gotten my answer to that question honed down so much that I very rarely mess up when I'm saying it, because it's like, this is something I've answered before. I know this, and that's going to help me a lot as a teacher because I'll know how to address those kinds of questions. I'll be getting them a lot,
Mm-hmm.
like having the more productive conversations, having the more, the more in-depth conversations too. Because that was the other thing. Like when I first started asking people about agriculture, it was very, very general conversations. It was, what's a GMO? What technology is involved in ag? Where does my food come from? How do I know it's safe? Now it's like, what technology is expected to come out over the next 5 years? How many years of testing do some of these chemicals go through before we're able to even eat them? Like weird, intricate questions I never would have thought of. Like, what would happen if you were to cross these two animals in an ag space? Would that be productive? Would it not? Like, we ran into a freaking Charolais Jersey cross. We still can't figure out what that thing's about, but it provokes an interesting question. Okay, well, what are the positive advantages of Charolais? What are the positive advantages of Jerseys? What would be the potential positive advantage to crossing the two? And so it's like, things like that, people asking questions of all kinds of strange and interesting, backgrounds, has really shown me that I even didn't, not even I was prepared for what potential this held. And there's actually, so when I started the podcast, there were almost no other ag education based podcasts. I looked. That's actually why I started mine, is because nobody else was doing it, and I wanted somebody to be able to learn from. And nobody was there, so I became the teacher, And so now there's a bunch of other ag education-based podcasts that are starting to pop up left and right, which I think is honestly phenomenal. I think there's a lot of hope for agricultural education to find a space outside of the classroom now, and people who are interested in it that are actually going to engage with the content, and they're actually going to show an interest and respond to it and that sort of thing. Like, a lot of the ag education-based podcasts that I've talked to, like Derek from United We Ag or Chrissy over from North American Ag, like, they show a lot of promise in the sense that they actually want to talk to the consumers. You get a lot of ag education, or a lot of ag-based podcasts in general, that they're just focusing on ag listeners. They don't care about the consumers. And not to say they don't care, that's kind of a harsh way of putting it, but they're not focused on the consumers like we are. And so seeing that there's more people trying to do what I'm doing is really, really exciting. Like, it's not like I want to be the only one to do it. It's like, no, as much help as I can get doing this, I want it. Like, I want people to go out there and help teach others about where their food comes from. I want people to get excited like I do. I want people to engage in the conversations and ask the weird and goofy questions like, well, how does agriculture relate to The Hobbit? Or, how does agriculture relate to, Assassin's Creed? Or, like random things. I'm actually about to do an episode here in a couple weeks on how agriculture relates to modern art. So like that, there's weird connections that can be made in all sorts of ways that I think is really interesting. Like we did an episode on how agriculture relates to music, and that episode went way deeper than I ever thought. Like people are starting to figure out now that there's a lot of utility in making sure that the consumers understand that agriculture is their life. It doesn't just fuel it; it's everywhere, a part of what they do on a daily basis. And I mean, like, even on the more mundane level, shout out to silly mundane things, but even on the more mundane level, when Gemma and I first started dating, and this is kind of goes back to our anniversary side of things, she didn't have as much experience in agriculture, and I kind of, started teaching her about agriculture, and she didn't really have an option, to learn it. She was going to learn it either way, but she, ended up enjoying it a lot. Now we ride horses, we are roping together, we go out and see the steers all the time, and I've taught her a lot about different cattle terms and what to expect whenever a steer or a bull is doing some kind of specific behavior. She learned a lot about a lot of different types of agriculture, and I'm not sure this is something that she ever. I know she said that she wanted to be part of that life. I'm not sure if this is something that she ever anticipated or really wanted to get into, but I think that being involved in it now, you definitely changed a lot as a person, and you seem to be more positive about things and seem to enjoy,
Yeah, no, that's definitely true. I mean, hey, so he and I were actually best friends for a year before we started dating, but prior to us dating, I honestly had this idea in my head that I was going to settle down with a nice city boy, and I was going to be a stay-at-home mom with, 4 kids, because I come from a very large family. I am one of 7 children? Mm-hmm. 7. I have 5 brothers and a sister. Mm-hmm. Yeah, plus me, that makes 7. I can do math.
Yeah.
I thought I was going to settle down with a city boy and, either be a stay-at-home mom or maybe study marine biology, because I still wanted to work with animals. My godmother worked at the zoo for over 20 years, and my mom worked at the zoo for a few years before I was born, so I very much grew up with animals being a very close and important part of my life, but the type of animals that I always associated the word animal with were aquatic animals to start. I enjoy going to the aquarium and seeing sharks, especially. I love sharks, but the different aquatic animals and oceanic animals, but also, giraffes, zebras, exotic animals, basically, the types.
Don't die.
Excuse me. The types of animals that you can't see on a daily basis. You can't just drive out in the country and just view. Like, if you're driving in the country and you see a zebra, either something is wrong or Tyler bought a zebra.
Or you're passing by Tyler's house.
In which case, we need to have an intervention with Tyler as to why he spent thousands of dollars on a zebra. But, I mean, I really enjoyed the exotic animals. But when Brendan and I started dating and he really forced me...
I told you, I got forced into agriculture, so now it's your turn.
I won't necessarily say forced. I was very excited to go out and learn all of these things with him. It was just never something that was realistic to me before dating him. But there's definitely been... I've seen so many changes in myself since dating him. And not just in terms of my knowledge of agriculture and... farm animals and so on, but like physical changes to my persona in everyday life. I mean, I used to wear heels everywhere I went. I lived in skinny jeans and leggings and crop tops, and I curled my hair every day, and I wore makeup every single day. There has been maybe 2 days in the past year that I have worn anything but boots. It has been 115 degrees outside, and I am wearing boots with jeans and a t-shirt.
You're welcome.
Or it has been 46 degrees outside, and I have been wearing boots, jeans, and a t-shirt, and I don't do my hair anymore. I'm wearing hats all the time. I have a farmer's tan. I used to have a heart attack every summer if my tan lines weren't even. And now I have a farmer's tan.
You're welcome.
Thanks. I mean, it's actually funny. He and I were just having this conversation in the car the other day about things he's noticed about me that have, like, little things that have changed over time, over the course of us dating. I grew up going to church and being part of the church choir, and all of my friends were in the church choir with me. I used to be in the car with him when we started dating, and music would come on, and I was a try-hard. I would belt my little heart out, but not too hard, because it would make me sound bad. Now I sing Hank Williams, unironically.
You're welcome.
Like, my entire being has changed, and a lot of it is I'm so much more comfortable in myself because I found a community of people who, not to say they don't care, but they're so much more accepting. Mm-hmm. I used to be part of a community of people who, not to say they were all, my way or the highway, but a lot of them were, well, if you don't dress a certain way and act a certain way and talk a certain way, then you're not going to be accepted within the community that we're a part of. Now here I am among country folk every other day, and they don't care at all what you're wearing, how you're talking. Like, the other thing we mentioned was I have developed a minor accent from going to the country with him to visit his family most weekends. And I've started, speaking in terms of, like, my actual vocabulary, more like a country person than a city slicker. I say city slicker now.
I don't even say that.
Your dad says that. That's why I say it. Your dad says it sometimes.
Yeah, he does.
Like, little things that even my parents are like, why do you do that now? And I was like, I'm dating a boy from the country. I'm dating a country boy.
Yeah.
Who I spend a majority of my time with. But they're all positive things in my mind because they've all helped me really figure out who I am as a person rather than who everyone around me wanted me to be as a person. So it's really, really helped me really solidify and develop my personal beliefs and my outlook on the world. And I overall have a very much more positive outlook on the world. I mean, I used to have a heart attack at the thought of getting animal slobber on me. And now I will go out and I will purposely let cows suckle on my fingers. I mean, the amount of nights that we used to be on our school farm and they'd have a baby calf out there and I'd just let her suck on my fingers as if she was, bottle feeding would absolutely horrify me 2 years ago.
Yeah. No, I think that, the past year has been very, very different than most in a lot of ways. I definitely have gone through a lot of changes. We both have, mostly together. And I mean, I moved out of my parents' house. I live in my apartment now with my roommates. I've gone to a whole new school. We've been stuck online for a lot of things. I haven't been able to really adapt to the new environment properly because everything's been closed and it's just now starting to open. The podcast has definitely gone through major transformations. The TikTok was a thing. You and I have been spending a lot more time together and getting to, actually kind of adapt each other. Most of my life, and still kind of, I've been very, stubborn, work myself to death kind of person, I don't need anybody's help. I just want to get my thing done because if somebody else does it, they're not going to do it how I want it kind of personality. I got that broken out of me pretty quickly because I got to a point where I just about did work myself to death. I literally, collapsed and passed out for a little while because I'd worked myself so hard that I hadn't been eating or drinking or, taking care of myself. I hadn't been getting proper sleep, and I just passed out on the floor, and my roommates got me up, and luckily I was okay. But that kind of taught me, like, I need to slow down a little, and realize everything that's around me, which Gemma's helped out a lot with, helping kind of with mental health stuff, which was actually a big inspiration for why I focus on mental health for a lot of different episodes, like with Ag State of Mind. I was kind of figuring out things with my own mental health, and so that was kind of a big motivator. Was I was able to talk to people who were in ag podcasters that focus on mental health. That was a big thing for me to be able to go to them and ask them for help. But yeah, so there's been a lot of changes over the past year. Regardless of the COVID situation. Just in life in general, I've been learning how to live with people who aren't my family. I've been learning how to kind of put up with things that I don't want to do, and also put up with and not put up with things I don't want to do. Kind of how to fight my battle, or how to pick my battles rather. A lot of things have changed. A lot of good things have changed. There's been some bad things here and there, but at the end of the day, I think that I'm a very different person than I have been for the past, how old am I now? I'm about to turn 21, 20 years. Yeah, I'm old, but I think that, the changes have been good, and, change is necessary for progress and all that sort of thing. But again, back to the podcast. The podcast has changed with me pretty much. Like, we've gone through all of this together. Talk Academy and I started up a second podcast, the Gamut Speech podcast. That thing died after a couple weeks. I had that going as soon as I moved over here. I tried working on it, and I just died. It didn't adapt to the change well at all. And Jim and I were starting to work on a joint podcast we were going to do, and that has kind of fizzled out. We're planning on going back to it at some point when we find the time for it, but it's really hard to take on new projects when you have 1,000,001 other things going on. And through all of it, Talk Academy has remained the one thing I can count on that's consistent in life. Despite work, despite other projects, despite, social life and school and all that kind of stuff, Talk Academy has remained the staple in my life that's been stable for the past 3 years. And I've been able to count on it whenever nothing else has worked out. I've been able to go back and look at my archive of episodes that I've done, the people that I've talked to, the stories that I've learned from, I've heard and listened to and learned from, the lessons that I've learned and also taught. And, everything that has accumulated the past 3 years has been preserved in Talk Academy. I had one of my closest mentors and friends and teachers pass away, and the only trace of him I have left is the episode that we did together in my first season. It was actually my first ever interview. And that episode is still, to this day, my most popular episode, and it's the one that I go back to and listen to all the time when I don't know what else to do. Like, I can't stress enough how glad I am that I didn't quit Talk Academy, how glad I am that Gemma pushed me to try harder and to bring it back together and start, just because it's not working right now doesn't mean it's not going to work, and that, maybe I need to change some things and try some new things. And, just because it's changing doesn't mean that it's not the same show anymore. Talk Academy has always been the same show. It's just taking on different roles every now and then. But it's crazy to me that over the course of 3 years, I've become so in line with this show that people see me and they associate me with my podcast. That's kind of a cool thing to be able to do. And it's never been about being famous. It's never been about being popular. But people associate my hard work and my commitment to this project as something that is a very positive thing. Like Dr. Oka, which I plan on having on an episode at some point, my advisor, every chance he gets, he promotes the podcast. Like, I got into class and I was introducing myself, and I, as my fun fact, mentioned that I have an ag-based podcast, and he was like, hey, why don't you go ahead and promote it for us? And I was like, Roka, I just want to have a normal day where I don't talk about Talk Academy for 5 seconds. But that's just how he is. He's so proud of the fact that I've been able to keep this going for so long and done so well with it that he wants other people to hear about it, which is very, very inspiring, I guess would be the right word. Like, it kind of shows me a lot of what Talk Academy stood for and stands for and will continue to stand for as long as possible. It's like Tyler said, if Talk Academy goes down one day, I'll just get up and do something else. But I don't think that that's going to happen, because the spirit of Talk Academy will always be me. The show may go through changes, but the spirit of it's always going to stay the same, and that's because I'm the one that's running it. And so I don't know, I think that being able to do an anniversary episode about how special the show has been to me and how much it's gotten me through and how much it's, gotten us through, really. It's helped out a lot with our relationship. It's taught us more about communication and teamwork, because she's had to deal with me making time to do episodes and edit and interview and all that kind of stuff, and I've had to deal with the idea of having other people help me with the project so I don't overload myself. And she's helped me with episode ideas, and she's helped me with TikToks, and I've been teaching her stuff, and she's learned a ton about agriculture, and she's given me a lot of inspiration to go on and teach other people. And it's just, everything's getting me more and more excited for the future, whether it be the future of Talk Academy, the future of my career as a teacher, our future together. All of it kind of intertwines, and it reminds me that no matter what else goes wrong, I still have some things in my life that are going really, really well. My relationship, my podcast, which I still consider to be, a stable part of my life, and just my general friendships and social life and my career path. Those things they're in a very good place, and so I'm grateful for that. But I don't know if you had anything else you wanted to add.
I think we touched base with everything.
Yeah, I think I didn't really have a ton of updates for this episode. It wasn't going to be like an update episode. It was more just kind of like a let's look back and appreciate what we've done. I mean, I wanted to give massive shout outs and thanks to all of the friends that I've made and all the people who have helped me along the way. I already shouted out Patrick and Alex, Joanne and Braden and Logan and all of them. If I missed anybody, I apologize. But anyone who's been a guest on the show, I definitely want to make sure I appreciate, I appreciate you guys. I want to make sure you guys know that. I've had many friends throughout my time on Talk Academy. Sammy has been a good friend. Dairy Muse and Tyler have obviously been very, very good friends and good influences in my life. Derek from United We Ag. I've made so many connections that it's hard to list all of them, which is crazy because it's only been a year since I started making those connections, and I still consider some of these people closer friends than some of the friends I've known since I was a kid. It's just it's funny how working on projects like that will do that to you, and even as a community, as an indie podcast community, we've kind of established that higher level podcasters, so like actors and like the Joe Rogan type podcasts, like the super popular ones that are run by like professional actors and voice actors and like all that kind of stuff, they don't really count. They're kind of just like bogus shows that nobody likes. The indie shows are where they're at because they're a lot funnier. They have a lot more personality. People are very genuine in them. It's not like it's a stage show that people are being paid to do. It's like people are doing it because they want to, because that's their passion. It's not something that they're doing because they can't go out and act because of COVID. It's when the podcast boom came and a bunch of actors and actresses became podcasters, it kind of discouraged a lot of the group because we were like, well, there goes our shot. Now there's a bunch of actors that are podcasting. But that was kind of the wrong attitude to have, because we're completely different communities. People looking for indie podcasts will find us, and people looking for professional podcasts will find them. We're not even in the same league. And so it's cool to see that we as a community were able to stick together and we're able to have each other's backs. I mean, I hop into conference calls all the time, and we just sit there and brainstorm stuff about podcasting and what trends are coming out and what we can address and what topics would be good to cover, and just fun stuff like that. And some days we just talk and get nothing done, and other days we have like a million new things we want to cover on our shows that we make notes on and we go and do. Like I have tons of notepads of ideas on things I want to cover, but I don't know. I think I've rambled long enough. I just like to give a big thanks to all my listeners and supporters, all of my guests, and anyone who's supported and helped out the podcast. Gemma, of course, has been a big help as well, and I appreciate her. But it's crazy to me that it's already been 3 years that I've been working on this, and it feels like it's been, at the same time, it's feel like it's been a lifetime, and it's also feel like it's been no time at all. And so it's a weird feeling. I hope the Talk Academy doesn't go away anytime soon, but I think that if it went away tomorrow, I would feel satisfied with how much I was able to get done with it in the short time it's been around. So, and on our note for our anniversary, I think that a lot of stuff has gone on over the past year, but I think that overall both of us have grown a lot as people, and we've grown together as a team, and I wouldn't be able to do half of the stuff that I do without my partner in crime by my side. So, don't know if you have anything else to add, but I think that kind of covers everything that I wanted to address.
I just want to say that I've been really proud watching you grow this past year, and I've loved getting to grow with you, but at the end of the day, I'm so proud of you every single day and how hard you work, and every day you amaze me with something new, and I'm just so lucky that I get to watch you and help you grow on your journey and be a part of it.
Yeah. Well, on that note, I did want to, since we end every episode by plugging something, I did want to plug some things. So obviously there's the Talk Academy TikTok. Go ahead and check that out because it is a whole different, it's a very different environment than the podcast. It's not so much of like, complicated conversations. It's more of me spending a minute trying to cram as much information as I can into a minute trying to answer questions because people ask very, very good questions on there. But yeah, Talk Academy on TikTok, and go check that out. It's a lot of fun. Ask questions. Let me know that you heard the episode. Tell me what you thought. I want to shout out Gemma's podcast. Once we get that going, it's Feminism Through the Ages, and it's all about true feminism, not the mainstream stuff that you hear on social media, but like actual women doing great things throughout history, and like what it means to be like a strong woman and all of those things. I don't know if you want to give your own plug for it.
Well, I think that about covers it.
Okay. And then eventually we will have a co-op podcast coming out as soon as we find a name for it, because we had a name and we found out that that's copyrighted, so we can't use that one anymore.
The joys of 2021.
And everyone being their own podcaster now. So we'll have that coming out eventually. We already have some ideas. We have an episode recorded already. We just need to actually figure out what we're going to do with it. But I think the last thing I want to plug is a new project that I'm working on that will eventually come out. I have no idea when yet because I'm still working on other projects. I'm doing some VR stuff right now, some speech writing. I'm still at some point wanting to do something with the Gambit Speech podcast, but that's not going to be until way, way later. But I have a new project that's coming out like very, very soon that I'm actually in the process of getting done right now. It's going to be a podcast. It's going to be all about animal behavior, the different languages of animals, kind of how to communicate with them. I want to bring on people who like speak the different languages, like the animal whisperers, like a horse whisperer, a cow whisperer, like that would be me. There's a guy on TikTok called the Turtle Whisperer. I want to get him on there, and then I want to bring Joanne on and talk to her about turtles. So I think that'd be funny. I want to, like people who speak all different animal languages, birds, dolphins, like whatever it is. I want to know different animal behaviors and how they relate to humans and how to communicate and work with different animals, because I think it's interesting. And so that one, I think I'm going to call it Talk on the Wild Side. Name's still up in the air, but that's kind of where I'm leaning. But that is something that will be coming out sometime soon. By the time you guys hear this, hopefully it will be in early development, and it might be coming out potentially by the end of the month. We'll see. I'm not going to make any promises because I still have a lot of other stuff I need to get done first, but that is another project you guys can look forward to. So if you enjoy all of the episodes I do on animals, you will definitely enjoy this podcast, as it'll be very, very animal-oriented. But that being said, I think that closes out everything that we had to discuss. Thank you all so much again for supporting me for the past 3 years, for supporting us, and I hope that you guys are around for the ride for the next, however many years we're doing this. I hope forever. But I know that I couldn't do this without any of our loyal listeners and supporters and everyone that gets involved with this stuff. So thanks again so much for tuning in, and we hope to catch you next week. And don't forget, if you ate today, thank a farmer.